I was pouring my third cup of stale coffee when I heard the break room explode with excitement. Melanie stood in the center, waving a thick envelope like she'd won the lottery. Her smile stretched so wide I thought her face might crack. 25% raise, someone shouted. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I gripped my coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter. Same job title, same responsibilities, except I did her work too. Melanie caught my eye and smirked. That same smug look she gave me every time she dumped another project on my desk. My hand started shaking and coffee spilled onto my shoes. 5 years. I'd been at this company for 5 long years, staying late every night, fixing her mistakes, covering for her absences. And she gets a raise? My name is Mara, and that moment in the break room changed everything. I thought loyalty mattered. I thought hard work paid off. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was about to learn the truth. And once I did, there was no going back. I walked back to my desk like a zombie. Everyone was still talking about Melanie's raise, their voices buzzing around me like angry wasps. I sat down and stared at my computer screen, but the words blurred together. 25%. That was almost $8,000 more per year. Money I desperately needed. Money I'd earned 10 times over. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed until 9 p.m., finishing reports Melanie had started but never completed. All the mornings I'd arrived early to fix her errors before Mr. Jamari noticed. All the times I'd covered for her when she called in sick on Fridays. My throat felt tight. I wanted to scream, to flip my desk, to march into Jamari's office and demand answers. Instead, I sat there like a good little employee, watching Melanie float around the office like she owned the place. She stopped by my desk around lunchtime, still glowing with excitement. "Isn't it amazing, Mara? I finally got recognized for all my hard work." Hard work. I almost laughed, but I just nodded and forced a smile. 3 days passed. 3 days of watching Melanie brag about her raise while I did both our jobs. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know why she got promoted, and I didn't. I knocked on Mr. Jamari's office door, my palms sweating. "Come in," his voice boomed. He sat behind his massive desk, expensive suit perfectly pressed, not a hair out of place. He didn't even look up from his computer when I entered. "Sir, I wanted to talk about my performance review," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Now he looked up, one eyebrow raised like I'd asked him to solve world hunger. "What about it?" "Well, Melanie got a significant raise, and I was wondering about my own advancement opportunities." He leaned back in his leather chair and studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile a shark gives right before it bites. "Mara, you haven't earned it," he said simply. The words hit me like ice water. "I haven't earned it?" "That's right. Maybe try working harder." I walked out of his office in a daze. Haven't earned it? I'd earned it 100 times over. I'd saved 3 major projects from disaster in the past year alone. I'd brought in 2 new clients. I'd never been late, never called in sick, never complained about overtime. Back at my desk, I pulled up my employee file. 5 years of perfect performance reviews. Commendations from clients. Thank you emails from other departments. All the proof anyone would need to show I deserved that raise. So why didn't I get it? I stared at Melanie's desk across the room. She was on her phone, probably planning another long lunch while I handled her afternoon meetings. The same Melanie who'd been written up twice for tardiness. The same Melanie who'd lost the Morrison account because she forgot to send a follow-up email. Something was very, very wrong here. I opened a new document and started typing. If Jamari wanted proof of my worth, I'd give him proof. Every project, every client interaction, every late night and early morning, I'd document everything. What I found would change everything. I spent my lunch break digging through old project files. What I discovered made my blood run cold. The Hendricks proposal I'd written last month, Melanie's name was on the cover page. The marketing strategy that landed us the Patterson account, also credited to Melanie. Project after project, report after report, my work had Melanie's name on it. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some computer glitch or filing error. But as I dug deeper, I found the pattern. Melanie always volunteered to submit our joint reports. She always offered to handle the paperwork for our team projects. I'd been so focused on doing good work that I never paid attention to who got credit for it. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more files. The Nelson presentation that saved us $500,000 in contracts. The efficiency report that streamlined our entire department. The cost-cutting measures that earned the company $2 million last quarter. All mine. All credited to Melanie. She wasn't just my lazy coworker. She was a thief. She'd been stealing my work for months, maybe years, and I'd been too trusting to notice. That evening, I stayed late to make copies of everything. Email timestamps showing when I sent drafts to Melanie. File histories proving I created the original documents. Client testimonials praising work Melanie had claimed as her own. The evidence was overwhelming. Melanie had built her entire reputation on my contributions. No wonder she got the raise. In Jamari's eyes, she was the star performer, and I was just along for the ride. I felt sick to my stomach. How many promotions had I lost because of this? How much money had she stolen from me? How many times had I worked myself to exhaustion while she took all the credit? The worst part was how stupid I felt. All those times Melanie offered to help with submissions, I thought she was being considerate. All those times she praised my attention to detail before taking my reports to Jamari, I thought she appreciated my work. She was playing me the entire time. I printed everything and locked it in my desk drawer. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Tomorrow, I'd confront her directly. The next morning, I arrived early to catch Melanie before the office filled up, but when I got to her desk, she wasn't there. Her computer was still off, her coffee mug cold and empty. I checked the break room, the conference rooms, even the parking lot. No Melanie. Then I remembered Jamari's morning meeting schedule. He always arrived by 7:30 to review the day's priorities. Maybe I could catch him before Melanie arrived and show him the evidence. I walked toward his office, my folder of proof clutched against my chest, but as I rounded the corner, I stopped dead. Through the glass door, I could see Melanie inside Jamari's office. She was leaning against his desk, laughing at something he'd said. His hand rested on her shoulder, fingers trailing down her arm in a way that made my skin crawl. This wasn't a work meeting. This was intimate, personal. I ducked behind the wall before they could see me, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Everything suddenly made perfect sense. The undeserved raise, the stolen credit, the complete dismissal of my concerns. Melanie wasn't just stealing my work. She was sleeping with our boss. I spent the rest of the morning in a fog, mechanically answering emails and attending meetings while my mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was the raise payment for her work performance or something else entirely? Every interaction I'd witnessed between them took on new meaning. The way Jamari's eyes lit up when Melanie entered a room. How he always seemed to have time for her questions but brushed off everyone else. The special assignments she received, the flexible schedule, the constant praise. It wasn't merit-based. It was an affair. I felt disgusted, angry, and strangely vindicated all at once. At least now I knew why my hard work didn't matter. I wasn't competing on talent or dedication. I was competing against someone who had an unfair advantage I could never match. But knowing the truth and proving it were two different things. What I'd seen through the glass door wasn't enough evidence for HR. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. I needed to be smart about this. One wrong move, and I'd be the one in trouble, not them. The question was, how do you catch two people who hold all the power? I decided to start documenting everything. Every interaction between Melanie and Jamari, every suspicious meeting, every time she left early or arrived late without consequences. I kept a detailed log with dates and times. Within a week, the pattern was clear. Melanie spent at least an hour each day in Jamari's office with the door closed. She took long lunches that often coincided with his schedule. She received texts that made her smile in a way that had nothing to do with work. But I needed more than observations. I needed proof that would stand up to scrutiny. The opportunity came during our monthly department meeting. Jamari was presenting the quarterly results, praising Melanie for her work on the Patterson account. As he spoke, his eyes lingered on her in a way that made my stomach turn. After the meeting, I overheard Melanie telling another coworker about her dinner plans. "I'm meeting someone special tonight," she said with a giggle. "Somewhere expensive." I followed them to the parking garage after work, staying far enough back to avoid detection. Sure enough, they left in the same car, Shamari's black BMW. Now I had circumstantial evidence, but I still needed something stronger. My chance came the following week. I was working late on a rush project when I heard voices from Jamari's office. The door was slightly open and I could hear every word. "The quarterly review is coming up," Jamari was saying. "I'll make sure you get top marks." "What about Mara's numbers?" Melanie asked. "She's been working on some big projects." Jamari laughed, a cold sound that made my skin crawl. "Let me worry about Mara. Her performance review will reflect what I think she deserves." "She's been asking questions about my raise," Melanie said, and I could hear the worry in her voice. "She won't be a problem much longer," Jamari replied. "I'm planning some organizational changes. Mara might find herself looking for a new job soon." My blood turned to ice. They weren't just stealing my work and my opportunities. They were planning to get rid of me entirely. I pulled out my phone and started recording. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd play dirtier. What I captured next would destroy them both. "You worry too much," Jamari's voice came through clearly on my phone recording. "I've been managing situations like this for years. Mara suspects nothing. But what if she goes to HR?" Melanie's voice was higher now, stressed. "With what proof? It's her word against ours. And I have friends in HR. They know which side their bread is buttered on." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Not only were they having an affair, but Jamari was corrupt enough to manipulate HR investigations. This went deeper than I'd imagined. "Besides," Jamari continued, "I'm planning to write her up for performance issues next month. Create a paper trail. Then we can let her go without any problems." "What kind of performance issues?" Melanie asked. "Missed deadlines? Quality problems? Attitude concerns? I'll find something. I always do." My hands shook as I held the phone. They were going to frame me, create false documentation to justify firing me. Also, Melanie could continue stealing my work without interference. "She's been here 5 years, Melanie said. "Won't that look suspicious?" "Not if the documentation is solid. Trust me, sweetheart, I know how to handle troublesome employees." The recording kept going, capturing 20 more minutes of their conspiracy. When they finally left his office, I had everything I needed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, playing the recording over and over in my head. The casual way they discussed destroying my career. The confidence in Jamari's voice when he talked about manipulating HR. The complete lack of remorse from either of them. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to wait around to be framed and fired. I was going to fight back, but I had to be strategic. Going to HR was pointless. Jamari had already admitted he had allies there. I needed to go higher, much higher. I spent my lunch break researching the company's organizational structure. Above HR was the compliance department, which reported directly to the board of directors. They were specifically tasked with investigating ethical violations and conflicts of interest. Perfect. I also researched employment law, making sure I understood my rights and the legal implications of what I'd discovered. Workplace harassment, fraud, retaliation. Jamari and Melanie had violated dozens of policies and possibly several laws. That evening, I began preparing my formal complaint. I organized all my evidence into a clear chronological narrative. The stolen work credits, the suspicious raise, the affair, the conspiracy to fire me. Everything documented with dates, times, and proof. The recording was the centerpiece, but I had supporting evidence for every claim. I took a sick day to finalize my complaint. I transcribed the entire recording, noting timestamps for key statements. I compiled all the project files showing Melanie's name replacing mine. I gathered emails proving the timeline of events. The document ended up being 47 pages long with another 30 pages of supporting evidence. It was comprehensive, professional, and damning. But before I submitted it, I made one final check of my facts. I called a lawyer friend who specialized in employment law and had her review everything anonymously. "This is a slam dunk case," she told me over coffee. "You have clear evidence of multiple violations. The company will have to act or face serious legal liability." "What about retaliation?" I asked. "Jamari already said he plans to fire me." "That recording actually protects you. If they take any adverse action against you after you file this complaint, it's automatic retaliation. They'd be inviting a wrongful termination lawsuit." I felt a surge of confidence. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I had the truth on my side, and the truth was bulletproof. That evening, I encrypted all my files and uploaded them to a secure cloud storage service. Then I prepared to submit my complaint. The next morning, I arrived at work early and went straight to the compliance department. I'd never been to their offices before. They were located on the executive floor, far from the regular employee areas. The receptionist looked surprised to see me. "Do you have an appointment?" "I have a formal complaint to file," I said, handing her my folder. "It's regarding serious policy violations in my department." She took the folder and disappeared into a back office. 5 minutes later, a stern-looking woman in her 50s emerged. "I'm Paula Lowe, Director of Compliance," she said. "Please, come with me." Her office was intimidating. Diplomas and certifications covering one wall, legal books lining another. She gestured for me to sit across from her massive desk. "This is quite a substantial complaint," she said, flipping through my documentation. "These are serious allegations." "Yes, ma'am. I have evidence for everything." She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "Including this recording?" "Yes. I can provide the original audio file along with sworn testimony about when and how it was obtained." She nodded slowly. "We'll need to investigate this thoroughly. In the meantime, I'm instructing you not to discuss this matter with anyone in your department." "Can you do that?" "Absolutely. We'll be in touch within 48 hours. The next day at work felt surreal. I sat at my desk doing my regular tasks while knowing that upstairs, investigators were reviewing evidence that would destroy Jamari and Melanie's careers. Jamari seemed his usual arrogant self, barking orders at everyone and making snide comments about productivity. Melanie floated around the office like she owned the place, still basking in the glow of her ill-gotten raise. Neither of them suspected that their world was about to come crashing down. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Please come to conference room C on the executive floor at 2 p.m. today. P. Lowe." My heart started racing. This was it. I spent the afternoon trying to act normal while my stomach churned with nervous energy. At 1:55 p.m., I took the elevator to the executive floor. Conference room C was packed. Paula Lowe sat at the head of a long table, flanked by 2 other compliance officers and a woman I recognized as the company's chief legal counsel. The atmosphere was formal and serious. "Thank you for coming," Lowe said. "We've reviewed your complaint and the supporting evidence. We have some follow-up questions." For the next 2 hours, they grilled me on every detail. Times, dates, witnesses, procedures. They were thorough, professional, and clearly taking this seriously. "We'll be conducting interviews with other parties starting tomorrow," Lowe finally said. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention." The next morning, I arrived at work to find the office buzzing with tension. Word had gotten out that compliance investigators were on site, conducting interviews with various employees. Melanie looked nervous for the first time since I'd known her. She kept glancing toward Jamari's office, but he wasn't there. His assistant told anyone who asked that he was in meetings all day. Around 10 a.m., I saw Melanie being escorted to the elevator by a compliance officer. She looked pale and shaky. An hour later, it was Jamari's turn. The rest of the department was in chaos. People whispered in small groups speculating about what was happening. Some suspected layoffs, others thought it was about the budget discrepancies from last quarter. Nobody suspected the truth. I kept my head down and focused on my work, but inside I was vibrating with anticipation. Every time the elevator opened, every time someone walked past our department, I wondered if this was the moment everything would explode. By the end of the day, both Jamari and Melanie looked haggard. They'd been in interviews for hours, separated from each other, unable to coordinate their stories. I went home that night, knowing that tomorrow would bring answers. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:30 the next morning, I received an email from Paula Lowe asking me to come to her office immediately. "We've concluded our initial investigation," she said without preamble. "Your allegations have been substantiated. Mr. Jamari and Ms. Melanie have been suspended pending further review." My heart leaped, but I kept my expression neutral. "What happens now?" "Mr. Jamari will be transferred to another division, pending final disciplinary action. Miss Melanie will face formal disciplinary procedures. We're also reviewing all project attributions from the past 2 years to ensure proper credit is given. And my situation? Lo smiled for the first time since I'd met her. You'll be receiving a formal apology from the company, along with back pay adjustment for the raise you should have received. We're also fast-tracking you for a promotion review. I felt like I was floating. After months of frustration and injustice, vindication felt almost too good to be true. There's one more thing, Lo continued. We're implementing new procedures to prevent this type of situation in the future. We'd like you to consult on developing these protocols. I'd be honored to help, I said. When I returned to my department, the news had already spread. Jamari's office was empty, his personal items packed in boxes. Melanie's desk was cleared out, her nameplate removed. My coworkers looked at me with new respect, though most still didn't know the full story. They knew something big had happened, and that I was somehow connected to it. The interim department head, a fair-minded woman named Carol from corporate, called an all-hands meeting that afternoon. There have been some leadership changes in our department, she announced. We're committed to ensuring a fair and professional work environment for everyone. If anyone has concerns about past or present issues, my door is always open. After the meeting, several coworkers approached me privately. They'd suspected something was wrong with Melanie's rapid advancement and Jamari's obvious favoritism. A few admitted they'd noticed their own work being credited to Melanie on occasion. I realized I hadn't been the only victim. Melanie and Jamari's corruption had poisoned the entire department's culture. But now, finally, we had a chance to rebuild it properly. Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Melanie's theft became clear. The compliance investigation revealed that she'd been taking credit for other people's work for over 2 years. Not just mine. She'd stolen ideas, reports, and entire projects from junior employees who were too intimidated to speak up. The financial impact was staggering. Raises, bonuses, and promotions she'd received based on stolen work totaled nearly $50,000. The company was pursuing recovery of those funds through legal channels. Meanwhile, my own situation improved dramatically. The back pay adjustment was substantial, not just the raise I should have received, but additional compensation for the work that had been miscredited to Melanie. More importantly, I was given proper recognition for my contributions. Client testimonials were updated to reflect my actual role in various projects. My personnel file was corrected to show my true performance record. The promotion review Carol had mentioned moved forward quickly. After a thorough evaluation of my actual work, not what Melanie had claimed, I was offered a senior analyst position with a 40% salary increase. It was more than vindication. It was justice. Melanie's downfall was swift and complete. After the investigation concluded, she was formally demoted to an entry-level position in a different department. Her new role came with a significant pay cut and no opportunity for advancement. I heard through the office grapevine that she'd tried to claim she was the victim of a misunderstanding. She insisted that any work attribution errors were honest mistakes and that her relationship with Jamari was purely professional. Nobody believed her. The evidence was too overwhelming, and her credibility was completely destroyed. Jamari fared even worse. He was transferred to a small regional office in a role with no management responsibilities. His salary was cut by 30%, and he was placed on permanent probation. Any future misconduct would result in immediate termination. The company also referred his case to industry professional organizations, which could result in further sanctions against his career. Both of them had learned the hard way that corruption has consequences. But for me, their punishment was less important than my own redemption. 6 months later, I was thriving in my new role. The senior analyst position gave me independence, respect, and the opportunity to work on high-level projects. My opinions mattered, my contributions were recognized, and my future looked bright. More importantly, I'd helped create a culture change in our department. The new policies I'd helped develop ensured that work attribution was transparent and accurate. Regular audits prevented anyone from taking credit for others' contributions. Young employees who might have been taken advantage of, like I was, now had protections and recourse. The system that had allowed Melanie and Jamari to flourish had been dismantled and rebuilt. I also became an informal mentor to other employees who faced workplace injustices. My story had spread throughout the company, inspiring others to speak up about unfair treatment. The legal department even asked me to speak at new employee orientations about the importance of ethical behavior and the company's commitment to fair treatment. I'd gone from victim to advocate, and it felt incredible. One day, I was working late when I saw a familiar figure in the lobby. Melanie was leaving the building, carrying a small box of personal items. Her employment had finally been terminated. She saw me through the glass doors, and for a moment, our eyes met. I expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even a bit of schadenfreude. Instead, I felt something closer to pity. She'd had talent and opportunity. If she'd focused on developing her own skills instead of stealing from others, she could have built a successful career, honestly. Instead, she'd chosen the easy path of deception and manipulation. Now she was starting over at the bottom, with a damaged reputation and limited prospects. Her shortcuts had ultimately led to a dead end. I didn't gloat or wave. I just watched her walk to her car and drive away, presumably to explain to her next employer why she'd been fired from her previous job. As for Jamari, I heard he'd submitted his resignation rather than accept the transfer. His departure was announced in a brief company email with no mention of his years of service or contributions. Both of them had discovered that cheating the system eventually catches up with you. The promotion ceremony was held in the main conference room, with most of the senior staff in attendance. As Carol announced my advancement to senior analyst, I felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with revenge or vindication. This recognition was earned through my actual work, my real contributions, my genuine value to the company. No one could take it away from me because no one had given it to me as a favor or through corruption. After the ceremony, Paula Lowe approached me. "I wanted to thank you again," she said. "Your complaint led to significant improvements in our compliance procedures. We've already prevented 2 similar situations in other departments." "I'm glad something positive came from it," I replied. "There's something else," she continued. "The board of directors has approved a company-wide initiative on workplace ethics. We'd like you to help lead the program." It was an incredible opportunity. A chance to make a real difference, not just in my department, but across the entire organization. I accepted immediately. Looking back, I realized that Melanie and Jamari's betrayal had ultimately led to something better than just getting my raise. It had given me a purpose and a platform to help others. A year later, the workplace ethics program had become a model for other companies in our industry. We'd implemented transparent reporting systems, regular audits of work attribution, and comprehensive training on professional conduct. Most importantly, we'd created a culture where employees felt safe reporting misconduct without fear of retaliation. Several cases had been resolved quickly and fairly, preventing the kind of long-term damage that I'd experienced. My role had evolved beyond what I'd ever imagined when I first confronted Jamari about my missing raise. I was now director of workplace ethics, leading a team of investigators and advocates. The work was challenging and meaningful. Every case we resolved, every policy we improved, every training session we conducted made the workplace more fair and equitable for everyone. I'd learned that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the greatest opportunities. Melanie and Jamari had tried to destroy my career, but instead they'd launched me into something much more fulfilling than I'd ever expected. The raise I'd originally wanted seemed small compared to the impact I was now making. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything unfolded. Would I have preferred to simply get my raise and continue working under Jamari's management, blissfully unaware of the corruption around me? The answer is always no. Yes, it was painful to discover how I'd been betrayed. Yes, it was frightening to challenge people who held power over my career. Yes, there were moments when I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake, but staying silent would have been worse. It would have meant accepting injustice, enabling corruption, and allowing other innocent employees to become victims. My story isn't really about revenge, though I won't lie. There was satisfaction in seeing Melanie and Jamari face consequences for their actions. It's about finding the courage to stand up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. It's about refusing to accept that you haven't earned it when you know you have. It's about documenting the truth and fighting for justice, even when the system seems rigged against you. Most of all, it's about turning betrayal into purpose. Melanie stole my work, but she couldn't steal my integrity. Jamari tried to silence me, but his threats only made me speak louder. They thought they could crush me. Instead, they made me stronger. And that's a lesson worth sharing.